As always, got to mention it's been forever. I think it's been 5 months. We just got busy with other stuff and
Uh,
put this one to the side.
it's been like
So
4 months, 3.5.
8. Anyway, either way, it's been a while. We're only like halfway through this book, and so just here's the next two chapters. We've got the Firebolt and the Patronuse. Um,
Yeah,
I
that's what I called.
yeah, pretty much. Um, so because it's been so long since the last time, what even happened in the last one? It was Harry was he snuck into Hogsmeade to basically just hang out with Ron and Hermione, and then in the process overheard a very conveniently placed conversation about Sirius, and now he has further context for that and has made a new enemy basically. So this chapter begins
Right.
with him basically just kind of autopiloting back to school and kind of trying to come to terms with what he learned.
Yeah, I mean, this is also the Christmas chapter, so we get a little bit of that still. But yeah, should I start off with my first note?
Yeah.
So Harry's on his way back, and it's noted at one point that like the trip back feels way faster than the trip there because they mentioned that like the trip there was really long. Um, and I think that's generally true even when you're not like processing shocking information. At least from my experience, return trips tend to feel shorter. I always figured it was something to do with like on the way there, you're having to like, you haven't been on the route before, or at least potentially not in a while, and you're seeing stuff for the first time along the way, and all that kind of thing, and it's new. But on the way back, there's more familiarity, and I figured less brain processing means you're perceiving time as going by more quickly. I read once that like when somebody like people that have been shot have reported like and survived. People that happened to reported that like the moment when the gunshot went off, it felt like time literally slowed down, and like there's evidence to support that like they can literally process time faster because their brain is in overdrive. Um,
Interesting.
because it's all relative to just how quickly your brain is running, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
I don't know. So I kind of extrapolated that out to like if you got nothing going on, um, well, it also depends because if you're bored, time drags on. So I don't know. Anyway,
So yeah, basically he gets back to school. He wants to. I mean, I don't think it's directly said that Harry wants to talk about it, but he's unable to anyway because they go to dinner and Percy is just kind of there, causing problems
yeah.
by just existing nearby. They can't
Mhm.
talk about anything with him nearby because Harry wasn't supposed to be there. So they go
Yeah.
back up to the common room. Fred and George like caused a ruckus or something, and so Harry just kind of goes to his room and spends some time alone. Um,
Yeah, he pulls out the photo album that Hagrid got him for Christmas. I think in the first book, full of like pictures of his mum and dad, and he eventually comes upon this wedding photo, which also has Sirius in it, and it basically results in him having like a nightmare because in the photo, Sirius is like laughing because everyone's having a good time celebrating, but he's like, "Oh man, this guy's a real scumbag. It turned out he was going to betray them." He just keeps imagining his laughing face. Completely unrelated to all that. For some reason, my copy seems to have a random misplaced accent mark. It says like, "and there, was Sirius, blah blah blah, whatever." There's just an accent mark over the first e in the word there. I think it might also just be
Rare
an ink stain,
error.
but it's
Yeah.
like perfectly placed and looks exactly like an accent mark. So I don't know. It is
Yeah.
slightly off color
It's
though.
just reminding me of, beanie tag shit where there'll be like
Yes.
a random dot and they're like, oh, what is this? Oh, I can't find anything about
I should
this.
resell this book for $20,000.
Yes. Um, there was a part where he's looking at the photos where it says that he never paid attention to the best man, but now he looks at this person, realizes this must be Sirius, and he's like completely indistinguishable from the version of him that he knows from the
Well,
newspaper because he's
completely unrecognizable. You mean
what did I say?
indistinguishable, as in
Oh,
they look the same.
yeah. Um, but yeah, and it's I don't really have anything to add to that really, but it's just interesting getting new context on stuff.
Yeah.
Um, And I mentioned, yeah, theoretical Neville just kind of can't catch a break in this book because first earlier on, uh, when Harry was getting onto the night bus, he says that his name is Neville Longbottom, and then here when he's having nightmares about Sirius,
Yeah, he doesn't
blowing
know
up
what
Peter
Peter Pettigrew
Pettigrew,
looks like.
Neville was just kind of a stand-in. Um,
Yeah, pretty good.
and it's yeah, this kind of kicks Harry into this very like driven state. He like is just very focused on Sirius is now like my number one enemy because he betrayed my family. He's the reason they're dead, and he
My
in the
name is
previous
Inigo Montoya,
books.
etc.
In the previous books, he had, the beginnings of what becomes the saving people thing, as they refer to it in Order of the Phoenix. But this is the first time he's, like, driven by revenge. And it's
Yeah,
it's definitely understandable that this is happening, but it is
which
a
is
little...
interesting, right? Because like Voldemort killed his parents. Voldemort was ultimately responsible for that. And like, let's put aside the fact that Sirius is actually innocent as Peter. Whatever, it doesn't matter who it is. The notion that it was somebody who was like a close friend that betrayed them. That is what drives him into revenge, not just that his parents were killed.
Voldemort is more like a
personal.
force of nature at this point, because he killed so many people.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This one was more personal.
Yeah. Even though Harry also doesn't know Sirius and has never met him.
Yeah, but now he knows that, Sirius was trusted and then allegedly betrayed them, so yeah, I can get it.
Yeah, of course, it's just worth noting, I think.
But yeah, it's like I said, it's kind of it's like a temporary change for Harry, because as we see later in the other books, like, he's too good-hearted most of the time to really like actually mean it when he wants revenge on somebody. Like, there's the scene in Order of the Phoenix where he tries to use Crucio on Bellatrix and he can't do it, and
yeah,
so it's like, this is kind of like the first instance of that, and it's like it's gonna last for a while, but I think it basically dies down by the end of the book.
Yeah, adds a little bit of color to his role in this book, gives him a little bit of an edge.
Yeah.
Starting to get into some of the dark material. And when Harry comes down, he looks like shit, as Ron points out, and it's just nice to see that Ron and Hermione like really care about him, because they've like rehearsed a little conversation where they're saying how worried they are about him and how they're trying to help him out.
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation, because they can pretty much tell exactly what he's thinking about and where his mind is going, and they kind of have predicted where the conversation was going to go enough to such a degree to where they kind of have like lines prepared ahead of time.
It's a little bit funny.
But then there's the part where Harry drops the bombshell on them. He's just like, "Do you know what I hear when I'm by Dementors? I hear my mother pleading for her life," and they're just like, "Well, shit, we didn't prepare for this one."
Yeah. But the thing is that that's not really a point. Like, it's an emotional argument, but he's not really saying anything that actually changes the situation. It's like, that really sucks, dude. But that's not any more reason that it's like a good idea for you to try to go after Sirius.
Yeah.
And Harry at one point mentions like Malfoy must have known, because he said something about like, if it were me, I would want revenge. And then Ron's like, yeah, but he probably just said that to fucking rile you up because he wants you to do it.
Yeah, because they're like, specifically saying, don't go after him. He's not worth it. And then Harry's saying, like, well, Malfoy said this. And Ron's like, are you taking Malfoy's advice over ours?
Yeah.
Like, come on.
And Ron's even like, he probably wants you to go after him so you get killed and he doesn't have to go against you in Quidditch. Which does sound petty enough for Malfoy. But at the same time, I don't know what Malfoy would do with his life if his, if his favorite target of hatred was gone.
True. Anyway, but yeah, it's like, it's Christmas break now. Most of the people are gone, so it's just kind of...
It's an obsessive, like...
What were you saying?
What were you gonna say? I was just saying, I'm not even saying it as like, oh, it's a shipping thing. I just mean literally, like, when if you fervently hate someone or really love someone, that like that's a type of like obsession, or like really strongly, it's a strong feeling toward them. Like that genuinely probably would impact Malfoy if Harry was gone. out of his hatred, the subject of his hatred being gone. But anyway,
Yeah, probably to some degree. No, I was just moving on because
yeah,
because Harry's been distracted. He forgot that it was the winter break, and basically the whole school is empty. It's like the three of them, and there's like 3 other students in the whole castle,
literally.
and so, not a whole lot happens, but there's just a scene of them in the bedroom, and there's some shit going on with Scabbers. Do you remember what it is?
Yeah, so like Crookshanks starts stretching at one point, and it mentions that Ron's pocket quivered, and I'm like, I don't actually believe that Scabbers could see Crookshanks probably from in there, or notice that Crookshanks was stretching. I don't think that's why. I think probably Pettigrew was hearing Harry's boiling rage about this whole thing, and was quivering for some reason to do with that, but I'm not sure if it's like guilt or fear at like what might go down between Harry and Sirius, and like if Harry finds out the truth, and I don't know, it's interesting. What do you think?
Yeah, it's like this whole year, Scabbers has been acting up, and it's because Peter's basically freaking out over Sirius because I assume it's just because he's worried that he's gonna get found out. But I guess,
yeah, maybe.
There is also the aspect of, for some reason, Crookshanks seems to kind of know what's going on here and does seem to be targeting him more than a cat would normally target a rat, so he's also probably
I think it's just because he's a cat. But...
I don't know. Crookshanks is weird, because it's like...
Yeah, he's like Pawneasel.
You're not really supposed to... Like, you never find out anything about this cat in the books. It's just like, oh yeah, he's part Neasel, but that's never said anywhere. And also, what the hell does that mean? So it's like, but he apparently fucking bought a Firebolt. So like,
what, Crookshanks?
Yes.
What are you talking about?
That's how Sirius got it. He gave the money to the cat, and the cat bought it.
What?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
This is explained later on.
I don't remember this. What the fuck? Excuse me?
Yeah, it just, the cat... unless I'm misremembering, I thought that the way this played out is, like, Sirius in dog form on the school grounds, I guess, it has built up this rapport with this cat, and it's just, like, gives the cat, like, a note and a bag of money to go to the store and buy this fucking broom. And,
There's no fucking way. Hang on.
We'll have to verify this later. I swear this is what happens.
Hang on.
Anyway, I guess while you're looking that up...
The wiki doesn't say anything about Crookshanks having involvement. It just says he got it as a gift from Sirius. Oh, hang on. Maybe if I go to the page for his Firebolt specifically. It doesn't say anything about it.
Do you want me to pause and try to find it?
Yes.
Okay.
We can't leave this unexplored.
Alright, I found it. It's at the end of the book, when Sirius sends Pigwidgeon with a note. It says, Crookshanks took the order to the owl office for me. I used your name, but told them to take the gold from Gringotts vault number 711, my own. Please consider 13 birthdays worth of presents from your godfather. So, it didn't go down exactly the way I said, but Crookshanks was involved in the purchase of this broom.
That's incredible. Holy shit, dude.
So, anyway, where the fuck were we?
Why does Crookshanks have the authority to take money from Vault 711? Huh?
Well, people have questioned this, and it's, fair enough. But I assume because, it has, like, Sirius's signature or something on it, they can probably check to make sure that it's legit. And people have asked, like, okay, so hold on, he's, like, this convict. Why is he able to withdraw money while he's on the run? And the answer to this is because goblins don't give a fuck. Like, they are not...
That makes enough sense.
Yeah, they are not involved in wizarding politics. They are just like, well, the signature checks out. This cat is, perfectly able to withdraw this money, so why not?
Fair enough, honestly.
Anyway,
Oh
so
god.
that's something that won't happen for a few chapters, but I guess we've gotten into that one early.
Yeah.
So I don't
Alright.
remember exactly how the rest of this plays out. It's just the usual shit
Basically,
of...
it gets awkward after. Yeah, I think Harry drops the bombshell about what he sees when Dementors, what he hears.
Yeah, he's...
Crookshanks stretches. There's an awkward silence, and Ron's just like, why don't we go see Hagrid?"
Yeah, because they want to get his mind off of it, and then Harry's like, yeah, let's go see Hagrid. Then I can ask him why he didn't tell me about Sirius. I'm like, oh my fucking god. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, then they try to, or actually, let's do this. Nope, we're going there. So, yeah, they go down to Hagrid's. You have a stupid joke here, but it mentioned that the snow made Hagrid's house look like a cake, and it's just like, oh, I think. But,
Yes.
if you get it, you get
And then something even stupider is they go up to the door, and it mentions that, like, I think they hear Hagrid crying from inside or something, and it mentions that Ron had his ear up to the door, and for the briefest of moments I misread it as Ron had his car. I'm like, when did the car come back?
Good shit.
But anyway,
so Hagrid is absolutely losing his shit. He's, just a blubbering mess. He basically topples over onto Harry, and they have to, like, try to push him back and get him into the house and figure out what the hell's going on. So they're looking at this note sent from the Committee of the Disposal of Dangerous Creatures, or whatever the hell it is, and
yeah,
it's basically saying, like, we're not going to consider you at fault for the attack of Buckbeak on a student, but...
Though notably only because of Dumbledore insisting that it wasn't his fault. Otherwise, they probably would have charged him with something.
God. Yeah, so it says that, but then it's like, however, we still have to review if this animal is, is allowed to live. Is what it comes down to.
And they're like, well, look, they haven't decided yet. You're going to get to argue for it. And he's like, it doesn't matter. Like, it's fucked. They've already made up their minds.
Yeah, and it's partially because Lucius is on the board, and he's a fucking piece of shit that just wants to cause problems for everybody whenever possible. But even aside from that, Hagrid seems convinced, like, he called the people there, like, gargoyles, and he's like, they have it out for interesting creatures. I do wonder if he's had to deal with them before.
Very probably.
Because we haven't, like, in the books so far, we already know about Fluffy, Norbert, and Aragog, and I don't think any of them would have been involved, but he's probably had some other shit before that has, like, gotten reported. I don't know. I'm also, it's currently December 24th, and this note says that the hearing is April 20th, and I know you said that court matters always take months to happen, and that's, fair enough. I just find it kind of, like, hilarious that even in this wizarding government, where the population is much smaller, and there's barely any jobs that people have that aren't in the ministry, other than, like, shop owners, it still takes this long for this case to get processed.
Yeah, I suppose that's a good point.
Also, April 20th, 420. Lol.
And so Hagrid's like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to have to figure out how to argue for Buckbeak's defense. And I'm like, hang on a minute. What do you mean you have to provide your own defense for Buckbeak? This is a fucking hearing. Why do you not get a lawyer? Like, I know that, I'm remembering now, in a couple books' time, Harry has a hearing of his own, and he basically has to just defend himself with Dumbledore helping him out. And it's like, Dumbledore's not a fucking lawyer. What is this? Do they not have wizarding lawyers?
Maybe not.
Like,
I mean, we've seen how the is it Wizengamo or Gamot? I don't know how you say it.
Like,
we've seen how they operate before, where they just put you in a fucking cage, and everyone's like, okay, so you've been accused of this, so to jail.
Yeah, you're talking about the scene in Goblet of Fire,
right?
I think that was specifically a weird case though, because they already had Karkaroff in prison. They just brought him out for questioning, but anyway.
Either way, they kind of suck ass.
Yeah, I mean, the fucking ministry is just they're fucked. This is so bad.
So there's a moment of levity here, which is funny because it still involves death, but it's obviously Hagrid's super upset over this. They're trying to take his mind off of it, and he's saying like this is I need to get over this, but between all this stuff and nobody enjoying my lessons, and they're like, well, we enjoy it. How are the flobberworms going? And he's just like, they're all dead from too much lettuce. It's like, oh my god, these things are fucking worthless.
Yeah.
Oh, and there's no joke here. But I just, because I just mentioned the 420 thing, I'm like, oh, too bad they didn't die on 420, then I could make a devil's lettuce joke. But anyway.
So, reading that, I was actually I wrote in a note here that was like, lettuce has no nutritional content. It's just water and fiber. How the fuck do you die from eating too much of it? But then I'm like, actually, let me look that up to make sure that I'm not going to make a fool out of myself here. And it turns out that's completely wrong. It is full of vitamins. It's got a bunch of vitamins and minerals. It's rich in like vitamin K, vitamin A, all this other stuff. It's quite nutritious. And I'm actually kind of pissed off now because I've basically been lied to. I've had not arguments, but I've had situations before where like my family were getting on my ass for like not getting enough like nutrients or whatever, and I'm like, well, I mean, I don't just eat the same like crap all the time. I do have at least a little bit of variety. I have salads a few times a week, and they're like, oh yeah, and what do you put in your salad? And I'm like, well, lettuce. Like, yeah, lettuce doesn't have any nutrition. It's just leaves. I'm like, tomatoes, and like, tomatoes are too sweet. They got sugar.
Oh my god.
I'm not going to get into my fucking here, I guess. But,
I am uneducated on the subject, but I do want to ask, when you looked this up, did it specify, like, what types of lettuce?
It varies by type, but pretty much all of them have at least, similar sorts of stuff, and they all do have some nutrition.
Yeah, because the thing that I learned is that iceberg lettuce is apparently pretty worthless.
So I've heard, but I've heard that is especially bad. But I don't have iceberg lettuce in my salads. I use other kinds. So.
Okay. Yeah, because with that one, like, I basically don't consider it to be food. Like, we would use it at Jersey Mike's and stuff, and it's like, it's basically just there to make the sandwich crunchier. It doesn't really add anything. Maybe there's a little bit of nutrition in there, but it's pretty mild.
Yeah, but I would usually use like romaine or little gem or stuff like that, which has some actual stuff in it.
Fair enough.
Anyway, it's just good to know that was a load of bullshit. And relatedly, it also doesn't matter if if you're getting nutrients; those aren't cancelled out by having some unhealthy component to it, like frying the vegetables or like using oil or whatever. A lot of people think that it's not true. Anyway, off my soapbox. You have a note here?
Yeah, I just said that I mentioned, I think, in like chapter 4 or 5 of the first book, how I think I said, like, Hagrid is just kind of the best. Like, he's not my favorite character necessarily, but you kind of just gotta love him. He's just the gentle giant trope. And as the series has gone on, I keep mentioning all these times how the fan base just is constantly shitting on Hagrid for being irresponsible and like leading the main characters into danger and not doing the right thing. And I can't really say that they're wrong, but even with that in mind, like this scene here where Hagrid is just, I'm loving the background noise, by the way, where he's just completely lost in grief. Like, you just gotta feel bad for him. And there's a part where he brings up like when he was in Azkaban in the previous year. I don't think he was in there for too long, but it very obviously has left an impact, and he will like do anything to stay out of it. He talks about how it basically just leaves you like this husk of nothing but your worst memories. And he said, I used to hope I'd just die in my sleep. And like that, just reading that part, I'm like, that is incredibly dark. Like
we're continuing on the trend here of just the ministry being completely fucked. We already talked about this a bit, but like, god damn.
Yeah, it's like, we had the stuff earlier about Harry having to think about the betrayal and death of his parents, and now wanting to go after Sirius, and he's having all these dark thoughts, and we hear this, and it's just like, this has taken a massive tone shift.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I said my bit on Hagrid before, but I think I like him just because he is a kind of more complex character. Like, you can't really boil him down into just being, an all-round great person. Like, he is, I think, overall a good person, but he has
Yeah,
a lot of issues and flaws. Like any, he's one of the most realistically kind of, complex people in the series, I would say.
yeah. That's the thing. I feel people always feel the need to boil down a character into like if they have any flaws, it's just like, oh well, they're a bad person. It's like, okay,
Right.
who are you to say that? But anyway, um, they agreed to try to help Hagrid a little bit with the Buckbeak case, and so they're looking up some stuff. I just noted that they found a court case from 1296 about a manticore, and
Yeah.
I'm just like, partially it's just because I live in America and this country hasn't existed nearly that long, but the idea of looking back, even if it was just the 1800s, pulling up something and like having that be relevant is crazy to me, and this is like way older than that.
It's kind of like truth in television for England though, because we don't have a constitution. Like we have the Magna Carta, but it's not really the same thing. We have like whatever the thing was that was signed when the Union was formed, which actually that might also just be the Magna Carta. I don't actually know the history all that well, but a lot of our law is precedent based rather than being based on like, well, it says here in our founding document of our country. Because we're so fucking old that that's basically what we have. Is just, well, here's how we've been doing it. Here's how we've handled similar stuff in the past. And with it's not like we're actually going to bring up stuff from the Middle Ages in modern court. I mean, maybe very occasionally, but like we're going to have more recent precedent.
Yeah,
But
you
the
could say
Wizarding
that
World
this is a
with the
situation
smaller
where you have to
population and
worry about the past.
yes, the Wizarding World with their smaller population and their more complex world, probably, I guess, makes perfect sense to me. That it's like, well, gotta look really far back to find examples of this highly specific case, because there's all sorts of magical creatures out there.
Hey, so now we
But
have
yeah,
a Jesus tangent apparently.
yes. So I could have brought this up at any other point, but since it is the Christmas chapter, it's just coming to mind. Um, I wonder like how the Wizarding World interprets religion, because they in a few pages they're going to describe how they go to the to the hall where they're having like a traditional Christmas dinner and all this stuff, and I'm just like, it's a little weird that they're celebrating Christmas, because like you know
Yeah, I always thought of it as being like celebrated complete. Is it non-secular? Is that the right term? Um,
well, secular means non-religious, so
okay,
it's
so yeah. So yeah, celebrating it basically, just by name only, but not with any of the actual ties to
I mean,
Christianity.
yeah,
But
that's kind of the way that a lot of people do it nowadays anyway, but
I did recently read something though that pointed out a thing I never really thought about in Deathly Hollows when they find James and Lily's graves. The quote on their grave is actually a verse from the Bible, and there's a few other there's a few other graves that have that as well, and Godric's Hollow, I don't know if it's ever established if it's a purely wizard village or if it has muggles, but this grave this this graveyard is right next to a church and there's like people coming out of it and stuff, so it's interesting to think about.
yeah, like I'm gonna be straightforward here. Like, do wizards think that Jesus was a wizard, or I mean, or do they they think of that as having been some separate matter? I mean, I guess it's not completely incompatible, right? Like wizards could be like, yeah, well, we have magic, but like this whole divine stuff is completely separate. Like, I guess I
Plus,
could imagine
you still can't come back from the dead and Jesus did, so
that's a good point. Yeah. Um, and the other thing though is like people will swear on ancient wizards and they'll be like Merlin's beard, and I don't really think people really say, "Oh my god." Ron does say "blimey," which does technically happen to have started as a euphemism for blind me, like God blind me, which people said blimey instead to avoid blasphemy. But that could also just be like like language that crossed over from Muggle Christian communities or whatever. I don't know. This is all a massive tangent. I know the series intentionally doesn't touch on this stuff, and probably just because of like but partially because of all the people already trying to be like, oh, this series is satanic, so they just kind of stay away from addressing anything relating to that. But
Yeah.
realistically, there would be some answers to some of these things. I'm kind of curious about them.
I just got a little curious. I just in my PDF I just did a Control F for God.
Yeah.
There's a which I don't know which book this is. This might be this one. Oh no, this is the start of Goblet of Fire. Malfoy says, "My God, my father told me about it ages ago." So it's one of the like. I would say that it's just something picked up from Muggles, but this is Malfoy saying it, so it's probably just common for people to do this.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the most likely answer probably is just that some wizards are religious in the same way that some muggles are.
Apparently Fudge says it. Yeah.
Moving on.
Yeah. Oh, here's Ron saying it. So anyway, I guess, they get back, and then it's basically cut to Christmas morning. They're opening their presents. Harry, of course, gets the Firebolt, which is very different from in the movie, where here he gets it alone in his bedroom, and in the movie, it's the stupidest shit ever, where he gets it at the very end, and just in the middle of the Great Hall, and there's this stupid package that's very obviously a broomstick, and they're like, what could it be? But so he opens it up, and they're just stunned to silence, and are trying to figure out where did it come from. There's no note. Maybe Dumbledore sent it, maybe Lupin sent it, and Harry's like, Lupin couldn't afford this. And Malfoy mentions Malfoy will be sick as a pig. I don't know if I've heard that phrase.
I think I have.
It just made me think of Futurama with, I think the whole line is, Fry says, I feel like a rat. This whole time I've been whining like a pig, and meanwhile Leela's been as lonely as a frog. Just the most random-ass statement.
I don't remember what prompted this, but I think they mentioned that Ron had been in detention clearing out bedpans.
Yeah, they said that Lupin is because Lupin wasn't in the hospital wing when he was out of class, so Ron thinks that he's been going somewhere else.
Right. Yeah. And so he mentions that he was in the hostel wing clearing out bedpans, and I'm gonna question this because obviously, famously in Pottermore, there's the whole wizards used to just fucking shit themselves on the spot and then magic it away. Here, that would actually kind of make sense. They can have the bedpans, but you would think that they would have somebody on staff who can magic it away instead of getting.
I'm sure they do.
Instead of getting people, no less students in detention to have to manually clear out the bedpans.
Yeah.
What?
That's the thing. I assume that they normally do that, and here it's just they're not specifically to give the, detention kid something gross to do to punish them.
One, that's unnecessarily cruel, in my opinion.
I won't deny that.
And two, I also feel like it's kind of a liability. Wouldn't that be really unsanitary? Especially if they don't normally do it, and especially around people sick in the hospital wing.
Yeah, probably.
Anyway, and so
there's another Scabbers scene because
I think it's when they're in Harry's room opening the broomstick. Ron kicks over his trunk and the stethoscope comes out.
Yeah, it's a whole thing where it's basically just the same scene as before, which is why I got confused because I think this thing happens twice in this chapter where Hermione comes in, Scabbers freaks out, and they're having this whole, I'm just gonna say shufti.
Shufti, yeah.
But yeah, there's this thing where Ron tries to kick Crookshanks and kicks open Harry's trunk, and the sneakoscope comes out, and it's just this whole big stupid thing. I love the background noise. But yeah, the sneakoscope is just kind of showing up again, and I think I mentioned before that I always just assumed that this thing was faulty and was going off 100% of the time because it's a piece of shit. But yeah, it's going off because of Peter Pettigrew.
Which is a nice bit of foreshadowing here, and
this sort of kicks off the rift between Hermione and the other two because she's pissed at Ron for trying to kick her cat. It doesn't get worse
and this
until
is
a
gonna
little later, though.
this trend is going to continue for the next few chapters.
Because what happens
pretty...
here is, I guess, just to recap the story, since I didn't mention this part, is Hermione sees that he got the Firebolt and immediately suspects that something foul is taking place, and she's like, this thing's probably jinxed. We need to have it checked out, and we'll see more of that later.
Yeah.
I apologize for the blender noises. So they go down to Christmas dinner, and like I said, it's them, 3 other students, and then just some staff.
Which is, they mentioned as being 2 first years, one of whom is named Derek, and a sullen-faced 5th-year Slytherin, I believe?
Oh, shit, I forgot to check if Derek was a one-off.
Oh.
We'll have to do that later.
Yeah.
But, yeah, and I somehow forgot to point out this thing that you have here, but before we get to that, they sit down for dinner, and it mentioned Dumbledore's like, look, we have crackers, and he, like, Snape pops one open and gets a hat with a stuffed vulture, which of course is from the Boggart situation, and so he's just like, and just kind of pushes it away, and Dumbledore, like, gleefully grabs it and puts it on, and
he is a whimsical man.
Yes. So I had no idea what this was referring to for the longest time because we don't have Christmas crackers here. When he said crackers, I thought he meant just the kind that you eat, and I didn't know what the deal with this hat was. I don't think I knew what it was until I saw Ashens open a bunch of them, and I'm like, okay, that makes sense, I guess. But this might count as an unlocalized Britishism. I don't know what they would... It's the type of thing where it's like... it's...
Yeah, I don't know what they would say instead.
Yeah,
it's literally just a thing that they do that doesn't happen over there.
Right. I guess, post whether you think it counts as one or not. But, so yeah, then Trelawney shows up, and there's some bickering that happens because of that, but then we have the, 13-seated thing here.
Yeah, because she mentions that it's, like, unlucky for 13 people to sit together at a table, because if they do, then the first person to rise will be the first person to die.
Right.
Like, in the, however long it takes, they'll die before anyone else there. Which could, even if that's true, that could also not really mean much, because unless you have, like, somebody terminally ill at the table, and then, like, a child stands up. But, yeah, I don't know, I mean... It's unclear how true this is supposed to be, even in the context of the story, but Trelawney certainly seems to think so, but not enough to decline the invitation, because they're like, oh, that's nonsense, just sit down with us, and she's just like, okay.
Yeah, she just kind of gives in. And so...
And I'll also point out that it doesn't happen here anyway, because the first to rise ends up being Harry and Ron. And
no, this has been analyzed by people, so the way that you're supposed to read this the first time is... There's 12 people there. She sits down, it becomes 13, and then Harry and Ron kind of rise around the same time, and she's like, oh, which one of you was first? And then, as people have pointed out online, because Scabbers is technically a human being that was already 13, and when Trelawney shows up, Dumbledore stands up to greet her, and he is the first out of this group to die. So it does make sense if we're counting Peter Pettigrew.
I would argue that it doesn't work because it says when 13 people are seated to dine, Peter is not eating anything. I don't think he counts as sitting here to eat.
Yeah, it's one of those things that...
That might be the intent, but I'm calling bullshit. I also just don't believe in superstitions. Like, even though I know it's like a magical thing in setting, I'm just like, no, it's fake.
I mean, it does sound fake as shit. It's one of the things where... like, a lot of the stuff that Trelawney and for some reason Ron predict just end up being true anyway. Just a neat little tidbit, I guess, but I don't know if it was intended. So she joins them. I immediately had to look up what a tureen is because McGonagall is, like, offering one to her, and I guess it's just a name for, like, a little pot. it's nothing interesting. I had to double check what tripe was because I'm like, isn't that like a lamp, like a sheep's stomach or something? And it doesn't have to be a sheep, but yeah, and it sounds gross.
Never had it.
And then Dumbledore offers, I guess it was Derek, some chipolatas, which I had also not heard of.
They're like little sausages.
Yeah, he mentions that they're just sausages, but yeah, I look them up. They don't look like they're particularly noteworthy, other than I guess they're just common in British Christmas dinners for some reason.
I wouldn't know. I haven't had a British Christmas dinner.
That's right, bathtub fish. But the only other noteworthy thing about this this meal is just McGonagall is like very. I don't want to say catty, but she's like just constantly calling out Trelawney's stupid shit. Like, every time she has anything to say about her inner eye or, any kind of superstition, she's just like, no. So it's like, she's just like, oh, it wasn't Professor Lupin supposed to be here? And she's just like, oh, I thought you would know. Well, yes, we don't like to always parade that fact.
God.
Okay, so what the fuck is this image?
New 3DS XL console, metallic blue, discounted.
Explain.
So normally when I write my notes, I do it because we have our notes in different colors. Yours is in green, mine's in purple. I will copy the purple hyphen, especially when inserting into your notes, because you did this chapter's notes first before me. So every time I write a new note, I have that copied. I Control V and then I start writing my note. I was in the middle, while I was towards the end of this chapter, I started talking to Joel in our group chat about, like, Pokemon stuff, and about, like, this is the most irrelevant thing ever, but you've been doing some stuff with, like, homebrewing DS, like, 3DSs, and trying to get Pokemon for a collection and stuff. And I sent him a picture of, like, oh, I got my new 3DS XL for pretty cheap, let me go look it up. I posted the picture to him. Conversation was happening. Later on, I come back here to write more of my notes. Out of instinct, I hit Control V to paste the purple hyphen. It just posts this image of the new 3DS XL image, and for some reason, I just found it hilarious. I just started laughing that this random irrelevant image just posted here.
Yeah, so just again, from my perspective, I wrote the notes to this first chapter last night, then I went to bed. When I get up, I'm like, okay, I gotta do the notes for the other chapter. I scroll through, I start reading yours, and I just see this 3DS. I'm like, what the fuck is this in reference to? And I'm just like, is this somehow related to the Firebolt? And
it just made me laugh.
Yeah, so I asked, what's up with the 3DS? And your response is just, new 3DS XL console, metallic blue, discounted. I'm like, yes, thank you, I see that.
It made me laugh. My actual note is so towards the end of the chapter, they go back to the common room, and Hermione is sort of like hiding behind her book as McGonagall follows them in, and just like, what's going on? And then McGonagall's like, I heard you got a firebolt, and Harry's like, yes, and she's like, okay, well, I need to take it. We need to inspect it for curses. He's like, no! Hermione, you snitched on us! and they're just like, well, it could be cursed. You said it didn't have a note saying who it was from. He's like, well, no. She's like, then there's a good chance it's from Sirius Black. This is a way for him to get to you. Like, this is a vector of attack. We need to make sure that it's safe before you fly it, or it could fucking kill you. And Harry's like, no, I know it's fine. Which is just the most, like, he is absolutely wrong. Like, right. I mean, he's correct, but he shouldn't be. Like, he doesn't fucking know shit. He's just childishly mad that his toy got taken away. And it's like, yeah, no, this thing very well could be cursed to kill you. Like, don't fucking give him the chance, you moron. and they're just like, if it's fine, you can have it back in a few...
It's not soon enough. And I think you cut out.
Fuck.
It wasn't a big deal.
Yeah, he's basically just like, I can't wait a few weeks. I want it now. It's like, dude, you can wait.
Right. So.
And we end there.
Yep.
That chapter.
So next we have the patronizing. I don't know where I'm going with this.
Patreon.com.
Yes. So, yeah, we basically, just pick up with them bitching about the broom being taken away.
He's still talking about it.
Yeah.
And what's really weird is that Harry and Ron keep being like, that broom is like super great and expensive and it's like crafted super well. By the time they're done with all their anti-jinx tests, because they mentioned something about quote-unquote stripping it down, which I didn't think literally, like, what is there to strip down? It's not like a car that has parts.
Yeah,
but they're like, oh, by the time they stripped it down and put it back together, it's going to be worthless. And I'm like, why? Why are you assuming this?
Yeah, I guess it depends on what they're doing to it, but I have no idea.
I see no reason to believe that they know what they're talking about.
But yeah, so this causes them to basically just give Hermione the silent treatment. Or I think it was more so that she just started avoiding them, and they were fine with this and made no effort to try to patch things up.
Mm-hmm.
And reminder that this happened on Christmas Day, and the other students come back and classes resume at I think it said like shortly after New Year's. So basically, she's been left alone for an entire week, just like going to the library and being miserable. And it's like, wow, they're kind of shitty.
Mm-hmm. And Oliver Wood comes back. He hears about the Firebolt, but about how it's been taken. He's like, "No way! No, I gotta go talk to McGonagall. She'll understand. I'll have her see what's really important." And I like the idea that he really believes that McGonagall would actually listen to him and be like, "Oh yeah, it's a good point. Actually, let's not test it in case it's fine, so we can win."
Yeah.
So I think they go to visit Hagrid again, right?
Well, no, it's just classes are resuming, and
because
the flobberworms are dead, they're doing something different now for care of magical creatures, and he has a burning log with a bunch of salamanders in it, which is weird to me because it's like, salamanders are real animals that don't live in fire, but mythologically they do, so these are obviously not the same animal.
Yeah, well, these are mythological salamanders.
Yeah, they just have the same name.
Salamanders were enemies in some of the Harry Potter video games.
And some of them don't have any place they can go. But,
yeah.
I don't think I have anything else to say about that. They said it was unusually good lesson, though.
Yeah. And so at one point in class, is it because Lupin's still sick or something, or?
No, it's like...
I don't remember what the deal is here.
Yeah, I don't remember. They're talking about it, because like Harry has the meeting with Lupin to practice the Patronus, and I think they said that like he still kind of looks sick, and yeah, I have to mention this. They heard a loud and impatient tuh, T-U-H, and it was Hermione tut-tutting at them for not figuring it out. I'm trying to figure out what this would be because
I know what it is.
Because I'll just say that I'm imagining it as they're having this conversation, she's overhearing it, and she's just like.
So books will often write this as tut-tutting or as TSK. I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be like that, like when somebody goes like that.
So it's a little different from the thing I did, which was just like it's kind of like a concealed laugh almost, which is like, or like.
Yeah, I don't think it's that. I'm pretty sure it's tut-tutting is definitely that's what that means.
But either way, she's very clearly just kind of doing it to rile them up because she's just like, "Oh, you haven't figured it out yet," and she's like, and they're like, "What is there to figure out? What do you know?" And she's like, I'm not telling.
I thought it was obvious. Which they're like, "Oh, she doesn't know anything. She's just making shit up to try to get us to talk to her." I think she probably actually has figured out that Lupin's a werewolf.
Yeah.
And if she has, that's pretty impressive considering how little information she's working off of.
I think she figured it out as soon as Snape took over the class and made them do the SN werewolf.
I mean, she probably did a bunch of like unnecessary extra reading on the werewolves anyway, just because that's who she is, and then she's like, Which, I think we just discussed this, but like, was that intentional on Snape's part? Was he trying to get them to maybe figure it out? Yeah.
So, they're still bickering, Harry goes to his lesson with Lupin, and basically he found another boggart to practice on, and if he hadn't found this, I don't know if Harry would have just tried to do the spell on his own. It probably would have made more sense to try to get the thing out and get it working without having the pressure of the Dementor first, and then work up to that, but whatever.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah,
and
probably.
there's just a little thing here where Lupin's describing the spell, and he said that it creates a guardian to protect you from them. And there's just like this little momentary like vision Harry has where it's like a Hagrid-sized figure with a club standing between him and the Dementor.
I
And I
have
was,
no memory of this. I'm wondering if that's an addition to your version.
huh.
Yeah, I have to go find it.
I always like this because it's a pointless little detail that has no relevance to anything, but it makes sense because I feel like it's just kind of natural. If something is described to
Oh
you
yeah, no, I did
imperfectly,
miss it.
you're gonna immediately probably assign some sort of visual to it before you learn what it actually is.
Yeah,
It's just,
true.
it's a weird piece of writing though because it doesn't really add anything. So it,
I don't know.
but I like it. I like it because
Yeah,
it's unnecessary.
I mean, yeah. People like to talk about. I often hear writing advice. It's like, oh man, you can't include anything unnecessary. It's all just got to serve the plot or the characters. And it's like, does it? Like, I don't know. Sometimes a little bit of flavor is just nice.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can certainly go overboard. But anyway, I found it. I guess I just missed that part when I read it. Um, but so Patronuses are like cool and obviously very iconic to the series. I do wonder how much utility do they actually have outside of warding against Dementors? Because okay, as Lupin describes it, it's just like you creating a thing that is just like made of happy memories and just like projects, joy and like joie de vivre.
Joie de
And
vivre.
yeah. And like I think the only other instance we see of them being used for anything was like that one time when Snape's Patronus like showed up to guide Harry to the Sword of Gryffindor in Deathly Hallows.
There is
Which
that, but there's a lot more because
oh,
they
really?
they start
I don't
using them
remember.
as messengers. Do you remember that?
It's just odd. No, not really. It
It's and definitely in book 6. It might have also been in 5. There will be parts where it's like, oh, I got to send a message off to Dumbledore, and whoosh, and they just like shoot out a horse or whatever. And there's like the scene where I think it was a lynx that was sent by Scrimgeour, maybe, I don't remember. Comes to the wedding, and it's like the Death Eaters have taken over. They're coming. Like you can apparently just send these to deliver messages.
can they talk?
Yes. Well, they talk in the caster's voice.
Right.
I assume you like record a message for them.
I see. What I'm curious about is how you remotely control them as well, considering you presumably can't see through their eyes or anything, so I don't know. I guess they must have sort of an autopilot mode where
I
you can just
think
be like, go here.
I think you send them to a designated spot. I think with the doe leading Harry to the sword, Snape was actually there. I think he was like hiding.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
I'll have to
That's funny.
check when we get to that point in 5 years.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah, Patronuses are kind of weird because it's one of those cases where I said this about the Philosopher's Stone, which isn't a Harry Potter invention, but it still was weird to me that it's like it can turn any metal into gold, and also it makes this immortal potion. And it's like Patronuses can protect you from Dementors, and also they deliver messages. Like what? Why?
Don't know. Kind of weird. And so Harry learns, the way that you can summon one, I guess, is or create one is using Expecto Patronum, which I'm assuming this is like Mario 2 is actually Doki Doki Panic tier trivia here. I figure everyone knows this, but Expecto Patronum in Latin means something like I await a protector.
Yeah.
Figured I would mention that anyway, just in case.
I don't know how much truth there is to this, but I feel like Expecto Patronum has just kind of become the go-to generic Harry Potter spell that people who don't really know the series still know about. And if that is true, it's probably because of the third movie where he, is yelling it loudly and repeatedly, and it just kind of, I guess, stuck with people. Um,
Yeah.
and it just reminded me of Suburban Nights, which is not a very good movie, and there was one of the plot points in that was there were two people who dressed as Harry Potter, and they're constantly like bickering with each other. And I think there was some stupid like expecto your balls or something in there somewhere. I don't know what it was, but and then like at the end of the movie they learn to work together and they both go expecto my fist as they punch someone. I'm like, oh, this is so bad. It was really fucking bad.
Wow. So to train Harry with the spell, he's like, I brought a boggart because it will take the form of a Dementor for you. Here's the thing: is that when the boggart comes out, Harry like fails the first couple times. He starts hearing the traumatic memories, recalling them in more detail even that he hadn't recalled before.
Right. He hears Voldemort's voice, and then eventually hears James's.
Yeah, and he passes out. Question: why the fuck do the Boggarts have Dementor powers when they're mimicking a Dementor? I just thought they took on the image of something, not their abilities.
I don't know. That is a good point. And I don't have an answer to that because.
And I feel like it would be easy for someone to say like, oh well, it's not really a Dementor. It's just Harry, because he's seeing one, he's scared. It's he's bringing up the trauma anyway. And I'm like, no, because he's remembering new shit. Like this shouldn't be possible. It's doing all of the things that a Dementor does.
Yeah, it's one thing if it's just like, the Dementor has this supernatural ability. It's not like, if it turned into a snake, but it's not actually venomous or whatever. Like here, it is doing the thing that it should do, and I don't know how it's doing that. So
no idea.
Don't know. I have a really long rambly thing here, and I don't know where I'm going with this, but I'll point it out anyway. So after Harry attempts this with the memory of him flying on the broomstick for the first time, the passage, I will quote exactly, it just says, "All right then, ... said Lupin. You might want to select another memory. A happy memory, I mean, to concentrate on ... That one doesn't seem to have been strong enough ... That part just kind of read oddly to me, because it's... because this is a book, there is 100% control over how the words are chosen and the pauses and stuff. It seems like Lupin is kind of stumbling over his words and trailing off here, and it could be just because, he's seen Harry being hurt by this. He doesn't want to put him through more stress or whatever. But right before this scene, there's also this bit where Harry is trying to focus on his memories, like, I don't want to hear my mother's voice again. Or maybe I actually do. And then we kind of come back to that later, where there's this weird little aspect of that where he kind of wants to cling on to that, even though it's, causing him pain. But because Lupin says, you might want to select another memory, a happy memory, I mean, it makes me feel like he was telling Harry to, think of a different memory for to replace the one of his mother's voice, but before he kind of realized that Harry wouldn't have any control over that.
I don't think Lupin said that intentionally, but I think maybe he was correcting himself because he's like, oh, maybe Harry will misinterpret it as being think about something else.
It's a very subtle thing, and I only just thought of it because of the fact that he kind of corrected himself there, and I'm like, that's a weird thing to include.
I figure he was clarifying that he was saying, okay, I'm talking about the thing you're using for Patronus, for expected Patronus. I'm not telling you to pick some. Yeah.
In that case, you might as well just write it as you might want to select a different happy memory to concentrate on.
Well, that's the point. Is it's Lupin accidentally sounding like he might mean the other thing, and he's like, okay, well, I mean this, clarifying it.
Yeah, like I said, I didn't really have anywhere I was going with this. I just thought it was weirdly written.
Oh, a little bit, yeah. And so after one of these failures, Harry is down on the floor, and as he's getting up, he's sort of like wiping the tears off his face, which is like mixing with his sweat or whatever. And it mentions that he stops for a moment, like kind of hiding down, like pretending he's tying his shoe while he does this because he doesn't want Lupin to see him crying, and that just breaks my heart. I feel really, yeah. Is that not in your version?
It might be. I don't know if I can find it because I saw your notes and I wasn't sure what that was specifically referring to. I'll look while you keep going.
Okay. But yeah, it's just I just feel really sad that he feels like he has to hide his vulnerability even from Lupin.
Oh, yeah,
you know, it's this sort of machismo-esque like thing. And it's just, I don't know, it's just sad to me. Like, he should be able to open up to Lupin about this and shouldn't be ashamed of crying in front of him or whatever, but I understand it's not always that easy to just get past that, so.
Right.
So he tries twice and fails twice, and Lupin's like, maybe we should, you know, it's okay. Like you've done pretty good for your first time. Like he's like, no, listen, I've got to get something to happen before the Quidditch match. I want to try one more time. And Lupin is very reluctant, just sort of like, okay. And so, you know, he does it the third time, finally gets it. He yells out the spell, which brings us an appearance from what fans have dubbed Caps Lock Harry, which we're going to get a lot more of later on. Yeah. But there's quite a few times in this series where he'll just start yelling entire sentences. This is not as bad because he's yelling
here he's just yelling a spell, but yeah, there's points in Order of the Phoenix where it's like a whole page of him yelling in all caps.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he you know, he doesn't create a you know, they refer to it as the corporeal Patronus. Patronus. Yeah, he doesn't create one of those yet. That won't happen until a little bit later. But this one, you know, fends it off better. It says that, you know, his memories of his mom screaming or whatever are getting kind of like muffled or out of tune. So, you know, they call it a night, basically. Harry mentions, he's like, you know, I heard my dad's voice. Lupin says that he knew James. Harry says, then you must have known Sirius, too. And Lupin immediately gets defensive. He's like, why do you think that? And Harry's like, well, Sirius was friends with my dad, right? And he's just like, oh, yeah, or at least, you know, I thought so. And so I have to assume that, you know, Lupin's immediate denial and, like, defensive mode there is probably just because he's worried that people will think that he's helping Sirius.
Right, yeah.
So... yeah, I just figured I'd point it out.
And then when Harry leaves, he can only assume that it was like, you know, something of a sore spot for Lupin. He basically regrets. He's like, I shouldn't have even brought that up. He's probably mad at me. And I've been there. I know that feeling of just immediate regret from bringing something up and being like,
yeah.
Or alternatively, that I should have, you know, if I was going to do that I should have at least taken the opportunity to pry more, but whatever.
Well, so just kind of moving on here, I don't think anything particular happens. It's just, you know, school is continuing. Hermione's struggling under her 50 billion subjects. It says that she's just always in the corner with a whole bunch of books and, you know, diagrams and stuff up. And it mentions specifically diagrams of muggles lifting heavy objects. I just find that hilarious. Is like muggle studies teaching, like, is it just like, oh, look, muggles have to lift things instead of, you know, levitate them? Isn't that fascinating? It could just be something as stupid as that, or it could be like, you know, here's how we think they built the pyramids.
Yeah, but they do mention that one of, like, Hermione's pieces of homework is an essay about, like, why muggles need electricity.
Right.
And related to that, she has all this homework strewn about, and, you know, once again, for, like, the third time this book so far, Ron and Harry are just, like, talking about, like, how is she doing all these lessons? Like, literally, I heard her talking about this one lesson that she can't have been to, and Ernie Macmillan says she's never missed you know, a single class of this subject, even though some of them are at the same time as divination. Like, what the hell? This is literally impossible.
The funny thing about that to me is the fact that Ron bothered asking. Because it's like, he's just like, hey, Ernie, you're in this class, right? Has Hermione ever missed one of these? Like, he's really invested in this, and Harry just kind of doesn't give a shit. He's like,
Harry
I'm too
care.
busy with Quidditch practice and with the Patronus stuff. I don't care if it's impossible. It's not my problem.
Yeah. And they specifically use the phrase "the mystery of Hermione's impossible timetable," which made me fucking laugh out loud because it just made me think of the mystery of Squidward's impossible sequence, Part 8 of Taco Edge's Squidward Deep Dive. So obviously we got that for this as well. Which, if you have no idea what we're talking about, don't worry.
It's just a random inside gag, but yeah, I like Taco Edge.
So Harry still doesn't have his broom back, and
so there's actually a bit here that I want to mention, just where Oliver Wood is coming back and fuming about, like, I'm bugging McGonagall about the broom again, and she got really mad at me just because I said I don't care if, Harry gets flung off of the broom as long as he catches the snitch first. You'd think that I said something horrible.
Yeah. It's a little bit ridiculous. Good bit of levity, though, I guess.
Yeah.
So Ron mentions, like, just order a new broom. Like, you're probably not going to get this one back on time. Like, you can there's like a form at the back of this, like, flyer or this magazine or something. You can use this to get a Nimbus 2001. You should be able to get one of those. And he's like, I don't want a Nimbus 2001, because if Malfoy likes it, then I don't want anything like that.
Yeah, Harry just says, I don't want anything that Malfoy thinks is good.
Which is just funny, because it has nothing to, like, Malfoy's opinion has nothing to do with the actual quality of the thing. By all accounts, it's a fine, good broomstick, like...
Yes, but I get it. The thing is, like you said, this isn't even just petty, it's dumb. I would qualify this as petty, but I think it makes sense. Because Malfoy has the Nimbus 2001, and you know how Malfoy is. If Harry shows up to the match with the same broom, he's just going to be like, oh, I see that you are trying to be like me, think that it'll help you. Like,
okay, but if he shows up with the Firebolt, Malfoy's probably going to be like, oh, I see, you had to shell out for the newest, hottest, broomstick just because you think that you need that to get an edge over me or something.
I mean, yeah, probably, anyway. But like, really the only winning situation here is for him to use a shitty broom and still win anyway. But it's I can get him not wanting to do this, because this is like, he's gonna get this isn't the reasoning he gives, but if you want to try to make sense of this, he's gonna get the Firebolt back eventually anyway, presumably. Like, he does, but he doesn't know for sure yet. But it's like, it would be really stupid to buy, like, the second best broom, like, a week before you're gonna get the best one anyway. It would be kind of dumb.
The question really was just if he was gonna get it back before the match with Slytherin.
Yeah.
So I think it's at another training session with Lupin that
they finish another session. Harry is not improving as much as he would like. He's creating the shield,
Lupin,
but it's not.
Maybe Lupin should have done what he did in the video game. I don't have a note about this, but I just remembered it, and it's really funny. Where in the book, Lupin is like really concerned for him. He's like, I don't even know if we should be doing this training. I'm worried about you, all that kind of thing. In the fucking video game for PC, you do like a couple of test Expecto Patronums against like some targets or something. I don't really remember. And then he's like, oh yeah, if you go in the back, you can go pick up an item for me or something. And there's a fucking trap door that just drops him into a room with like 5 actual Dementors that you have to immediately use it on. it's like kind of a jump scare, and it's really funny though. And clearly Lupin should have just done that. That would have gotten him ready.
But so yeah, Harry is he's able to kind of hold the shield to like repel them back a bit, but not like indefinitely. And so he's hoping that he would progress faster. But Lupin's insisting, like, this is really hard. It's impressive that you're even doing this much. And he brings out some butterbeer, and Harry's like, oh man, that stuff's great. And it's like, when have you tried this? He's like, oh, they brought some for me.
Yeah.
But while they're having their drinks, suddenly Harry's just like, so what's under a Dementor's hood? And yeah, Lupin's like, well, here's some light conversation.
Right.
You want to get into it?
Yeah, I mean, he's like, oh well, no one that's seen it is in any right state to tell us because Dementors only pull back their hood when they're about to go in for their finishing move. And Harry's like, what do you mean? He's like, they have this thing called the Dementor's Kiss, which they only use on somebody that they really want to fully destroy, where they basically put their mouth to yours and suck your soul out. And Harry's just like, oh!
Yeah, Harry, he spits out his drink. He's like, oh my god.
Yeah. Which is extremely fucked. Like, as if we haven't said it enough already, but the fact that the wizarding world has ministry enforced soul destruction is one of the worst, most draconian things I've ever heard. Like, the death penalty was bad enough, the Dementors were bad enough, like that the ministry uses them. I forgot that they sometimes do this on people specifically. Like they mentioned that they've been given permission to do it to Sirius if they find him.
Yeah,
I thought this was just something the Dementors did on their own.
No, so here we're foreshadowing a bit, but at the very end of Goblet of Fire, when they find out that Moody has been Barty Crouch Jr. the whole time, the Ministry just immediately perform the Dementor's Kiss on him before they can even interrogate him and find anything out. And this is this is a plot point because it fucks a lot of stuff up, because it's we could have gotten evidence on Voldemort's return here, but now we can't.
Also, I assume that means that he didn't go through trial or anything, which is absurd.
Yeah. So I hate whenever I have to bring this story up, but in Methods of Rationality, there's a good point that gets raised about this, because in the wizarding world, through the existence of ghosts and also just through how Dementors work, there is concrete evidence that there is definitely an afterlife. And it kind of messes up, the perception of life when you know that as a fact, because I feel weird saying this, because people who are heavily religious believe without a shadow of a doubt that there is a heaven and hell and whatever, and I guess that's probably about the same thing. But it's when you know for a fact that when you die your spirit lives on and you're going to be able to meet up with all the people that you lost in your life and everything, it kind of dampens the tragedy of death and the desire to want to stay alive in the first place, because it's like, oh well, I might die here, but that's fine, I've got the afterlife. And I feel like that just kind of fucks up all of life.
Yeah,
it's a little weird. I don't really know what else to say on that subject, but it is something to think about.
Yeah, I guess so. And so on this subject, despite saying it's very fucked up, Harry's like, I think Sirius deserves it though. And Lupin's just like, really? You think anyone deserves that? And he's like, yes, some people do. Right. It was just like, okay. And that's pretty fucking edgy.
A little bit.
It's a touchy subject, because I think that people would still obviously a lot of people still disagree about this. I'm of the opinion that nobody deserves to have their life ruined or taken away, even the worst people, especially if they're at your mercy. Death penalty especially is I think pretty unforgivable. This person is literally not a harm to anybody, and you're still their life is completely in your hands, and then you choose to take it. That's beyond cruel, in my opinion.
I pretty much agree with that.
But with Harry, and I felt differently in the past. When I was a teenager, I was like, no, some people are fucking awful. They need to go. That's just it. But that was very much fueled by just, rage. It was not a rational thing that I was thinking. And I think it's the same thing with Harry here. I don't know if he really, because again, you mentioned that later on he tries to use Crucio and stuff, and that doesn't work. So he doesn't really have it in him. He's just it's just his emotions talking here. But yeah, overall he's been very edgy these past couple of chapters.
Yeah, it's gonna clear up.
I don't remember it being that intense. You know, it's been ages since I read the book, but yeah, I didn't remember it being that intense.
So after this meeting, Harry runs into McGonagall, literally, and she's like, "Well, we've done everything you can. Your broomstick is safe." And he's like, "Oh shit, okay, awesome." And he,
he
goes,
basically immediately forgets about.
Yeah, he like immediately goes back to the common room, and they're just like, "Well, Hermione was wrong, so that means everything is fine. So let's make up with her." And
yeah, I mean, at least they came around. They're actually even like, she was just looking out for us. I can't be too mad at her.
Yeah, they kind of had to like, hesitantly admit that. It's like, it's fine.
Which I mean, they could have just been like, "See, there was nothing wrong with it," but yeah.
And that's the thing is, they kind of still do, or at least Ron does, because he's kind of a little bitch sometimes. But
right.
Yeah, so they come in. Everybody wants to fondle this thing. And Hermione, of course, is in the corner just trying to ignore all of it, and Harry goes over and is just like, "Hey, how you doing?" And trying to just make things right again while Ron goes off to do something. There's a bit you have here, the Clapton irons.
Right. Because when he's coming back to the common room at one point,
that's right. Yeah, Neville had the list of passwords that he lost, which will come into play later.
Yeah, because Sir Cadogan has taken over portrait guard duty, and he keeps changing the password like every day. And so Neville has a password, and the password list, and he tries all of them, and they don't work.
Well, no, it was because he had the list, but he lost it.
Oh, that's right. Okay, my bad. Is it Sir Cadogan that says it doesn't matter, but... Oh, here we go, yeah. I wrote them down, Neville was saying tearfully, but I must have dropped them somewhere. "A likely tale," roared Sir Cadogan, then spotting Harry and Ron. "Good evening, my fine young yeoman. Come clap this loon in irons. He is trying to force entry to the chambers within." "Oh, shut up," said Ron as he and Harry drew level with Neville. So I just like the phrase "clapped in irons." It gets used a lot in Final Fantasy XIV. It always makes me laugh.
What does that refer to? Like putting someone in chains, or
in handcuffs? Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, irons refer to iron manacles, iron handcuffs.
But after that whole thing happens, like I said, they get in. Harry's trying to kind of make peace with Hermione. She's struggling under the workload, but it seems like she's at least happy that things are kind of getting patched up. Ron isn't in the room, and then he, suddenly you just hear like, "Oh!" And, he rushes down with...
Well, even before that.
Right. Oh, right, yeah, you had another thing, just...
Yeah, there's a weird thing here, which I guess must have been either a typo, or a mistake, or just, a really obscure, weird bit of, British grammar that I've somehow never heard before. Because in my book, Harry gets close to... Is it when he's close to Hermione?
Yeah, because it's when he's talking to her, and...
So Harry sits down near her. "How are you getting through all this stuff?" Harry asked her. "Oh, well, working hard," said Hermione. "Close to, Harry saw that she looked almost as tired as Lupin." You mean close to her?
Yeah.
In your version,
in my version, it says close up.
Close up, Harry saw that. Yeah, that makes sense. But close to, or even close to, that doesn't sound right to me. It feels like there's a missing word there.
It's a little weird, but it's the type of thing where if I saw that, I would be like, "That's weird. That's probably just, weird British grammar." But if you've never seen it either, then...
It's weird to me. I've never seen it, yeah.
So, that aside, yeah, I think we're at the end of the chapter here where Ron rushes in dramatically. He's like, "There was blood on the bed sheets, Scabbers is gone, and there was cat hair on the floor."
Malone has gone missing.
And, yeah. And
actually, that's more like when Sirius Black, like when all those people died. 12 people are dead, and Sirius Black has gone missing. Anyway,
but yeah, it was. I missed this earlier, but I think in the last chapter there was a part that I thought was kind of funny where Harry just is like internalizing. He's like, even though Ron frequently is complaining about Scabbers being useless, Harry's very sure that he would be miserable if Scabbers died. And so, yeah, here it is. The evidence is pointing that Crookshanks killed him, and he's very pissed. And the chapter ends there.
Yeah. And I have a stupid joke here where I just said, "Oh no, the basilisk is back," because there's a line that says that the students were all petrified at the foot of the stairs
Yeah.
when they heard the sound. But yeah, should we do comments?
Yep, if we've got any.
Yeah. So apparently we said something about well, you wondered why Filch, hasn't done something about the known like routes to Hogsmeade. He's done nothing to block them, and somebody in the comments suggested like, I mean, why would he? He might want to use those passages himself to get around quickly, especially because he doesn't have any magical abilities. I will say I don't think you can apparate around anyway, even if you're a teacher. Probably have to walk everywhere too, but
yeah, you can't apparate in the school.
Yeah, but he still probably would feel, the dude has nothing going for him. So if he's like, well, I can at least get around with these secret passages, maybe that's a. Yeah. And Fred and George are probably smart enough to avoid him using it. This comment says so that Filch wouldn't necessarily know that they're using it. So this just, they were just warning Harry to watch out about that. So that makes sense. I think I questioned how Harry even has any of this stuff in his memory when he was literally a baby, and it's magical or not, it shouldn't be possible for him to recall memories that he, was too young to have been able to form long-term memories about. Somebody mentioned maybe it's because he has part of Voldemort's soul inside of him, and
could be. I always just assumed it was a magical thing, but I guess that could be part of it too.
I'm of the opinion that the Voldemort thing actually makes more sense personally. Let's see.
I'm just an asshole who doesn't. If I'm told it, babies don't retain their memories, like you don't start forming memories until you're 3 years old. I hear that and I'm just like, we don't know that for sure. There's a possibility that there's stuff buried in there that you just normally can't remember.
I mean, memory is a weird subject that we don't know all that much about, so like there might be something to that, but I think it's pretty well established that like no, you literally can't form memories of that stuff. But yeah, I wouldn't know. I'm not actually a neurologist or anything. And I guess that's basically it. You said you wanted to look up if Derek was a one-off named character, but I don't know if you want to do that off screen or what.
Let me go ahead and do it now. I'll pause and I will come back when I know one way or the other. I am reasonably sure that Derek is a named one-off. The Harry Potter wiki has an article, because of course it does, and it just mentions this one interaction. The only appearance is from this book, and the PDF that I'm using has been kind of bad lately at like actually searching for stuff properly, but it hasn't found another instance of the name, so huzzah. Also, in terms of counters, we did have at the end of chapter 11, there was a heel turn. Professor McGonagall turned on her heel and carried the Firebolt out.
Yeah.
I think that was about it. Nothing else I could think of to add to these.
So yeah, I guess next time we'll be covering Gryffindor versus Ravenclaw and Snape's Grudge, wherein we continue on with the notes of Ron and Hermione's deepening rift. Harry has his Quidditch game, and also some more stuff about the whole Scabbers, Sirius Black.
From the title, Snape's Grudge, I actually don't remember what that's even referring to specifically. But we will find out.
Well, it's the grudge against the Marauders, I assume.
Oh, right. That's probably... Yeah, that's when he finds the map. Okay.
Yeah. I think so.
Okay. Hopefully, will not be a long delay before the next one.
Hopefully. See you then.